Hi, everyone. I'm Stan Mallow. Welcome to Paranormal Yacker. My guest on today's show is Brian Allen. He is the author of a number of books, all of which deal with various aspects of the paranormal, and is currently the editor-in-chief of the international online publication Phenomena Magazine. Brian is the recipient of Strange Phenomena Investigations Tartan Skull Award for services to ufology and the paranormal in Scotland. I'll be yakking with him about The Deceptions of Gods and Men, co-written with fellow author and supernatural researcher Barry Fitzgerald. Brian Allen, welcome to Paranormal Yacker.
Hey, thank you for having me on. It's a real pleasure.
Over the millennia, mankind has relied on mystics, shamans, and priests to explain what awaits them on the next life. But what really lurks behind the veil separating this world from the next? Your book addresses that question. What inspired or motivated you and Barry to explore and write about that subject?
I guess you could say it's just a logical progression because we've both been at this for a lot of years. Me, I'm almost 80 years old now, and I had my first experience as a child of 3, and I met with something that was clearly from the other side. And I remember being once told it was a hypnagogic hallucination. It was no hallucination. This was real. It was as real as me talking to you. And this thing was standing beside my bed with its arms folded, looking at me. In retrospect, I would say it wasn't a ghost. It was nothing frightening. It was either, and this is going to sound crazy, but not so much really. It was either a fairy or it was an ET. And I'm pretty sure it was an ET because just a few months later, when I was still around about 3 years old, I had a second dream, not a dream, I had a second awakening. And this is before UFOs were even thought about, because you're looking back to 1946, around then, around 46, but almost on to 1947. This is before everyone knew what a standard UFO looked like, the standard disc shape. Well, I had this impression of seeing one, of a standard disc shape UFO, what we would call a UFO, and it was parked outside my window, and I could see through. I could see it was lying in my bed, looking out the window, and I could see this thing. And this was just after I had this experience of having this creature standing with its arms folded, watching me. It wasn't threatening. I didn't feel in any danger, but it was real. So I had that experience. I had what we call a UFO, and I've had these experiences ever since. There's nothing pre-planned about them. They just occur, and I've had these experiences throughout my entire life. And I guess that was, you could say, got me switched on. That's what turned me on, and I've been doing it ever since, really. After all the books that I've written so far. In fact, there's a book coming out after this. It's called Book of Secrets, Aliens, Ghosts, and Ancient Mysteries, and it'll be published again by Flying Disc Press. It's getting published in a few months' time, and it'll be my 14th book. This book, which you've just described, that I wrote with Barry, this was a progression for both of us. It was actually after I met Barry, which I've known Barry about 2 or 3 years now, and he asked me, did I think, would I like to join him in it, to join him in the book, write the book with him? And I said, yeah, why not? Yeah. I said, what's it about? You tell me what you want and I'll write. So Barry had already written some of it, and he specifically asked me, could you write about this, and this, and especially a piece in artificial intelligence, which is a subject I'm well into just now. And the book just took off and flew. And after a few discussions back and forth and a bit of tweaking, the final result was sent to Philip Mantle at Flying Disc Press, and the results are now out.
The Deceptions of Gods and Men offers an alternative viewpoint regarding the afterlife beliefs held by most people. What, Brian, is that alternative viewpoint?
Since the beginning of time itself, going back tens of thousands, millions of years if you want, there have been things out there that exist beyond what Barry and I have called the veil, okay? And they exist in a void. Now, this void is totally black. There's just nothing. That is utter blackness, and they exist there. They are infinite deceivers. They're liars. They're deceivers. That's all they do. That's all they know, because they need us to exist on this side. They have no physical form whatsoever, as I said, and they need us human beings as shells for them, as vehicles for them when they get through to our side. Now, they deceive us, as I say, because they have to deceive us, because without our cooperation, whether it's willing or inadvertent, they don't exist. So they need to be with us. Now, they have what Barry came up with the term. He calls it, they have a shadow, as we have a shadow. As Barry puts, and this took a lot of, this is one of the things that why I like, one of the reasons I like Barry so well, that we think in much the same, yeah, we have the same set of values and we think in the same manner. But the book itself, initially I was a bit, well, maybe. And the more I thought about it, and the more I asked Barry, and I asked him some pretty searching questions about it before he even started writing it, so I could understand what he was talking about. And once I understood it, yeah, all started to fall in place. It's even likely that these things created us to act as vessels on their behalf, to bring them through from the void to us. They have, as I said, they have a spirit, as we have a spirit. They have a soul, which Barry has called the shadow, but we supply the third part of the trilogy. We supply the physical body. Now, they've been known as angels, demons, fairies, the jinn, the Nephilim, the Shining Ones, you name it, the Council of Nine, who were the Ennead of ancient Egypt, the 9 gods of ancient Egypt. They were the Roman and Egyptian gods, and even, if you like, space brothers, to put a less threatening gloss on what they are and what they do. They've had various names of as I say, and various civilizations have encountered them and dressed them in their own clothes, if you like, so that they were always there, and they always presented themselves in the least threatening manner to make them acceptable, that we wouldn't reject them out of hand. Because it's very difficult to stay on subject with this book, because it goes off in all sorts of different directions unless you hold the reins pretty tight. You could almost say that alien abduction is one of the ways in which we encounter them. Although these things are not ETs, these are not extraterrestrial, or they're extraterrestrial in the sense that they don't belong here. They belong really on the other side of this void. But as I say, they desperately need us to get to here. We'll get to it eventually, but there's a very good reason that what they're trying to do with us, acting as their shells. When we die, when the physical body breaks down, which obviously it does, and we die, they have to get out. They either have to latch on to another human being, or they go back to the other side of the veil. They just collapse back into it. But that usually takes a little while. When we die, the spirit just goes, it goes instantaneous, it goes. But the soul or shadow doesn't. It can hang around the body for hours, days, weeks, months even, until it can perhaps latch onto another human being that happens to come by. They can latch onto it. But if they don't, they will collapse back into the veil again and go back to the other side. But they can come back at any point. In fact, they can come back in quite a considerable numbers, because some people make sure that they can be seen by them. And they do this in a number of ways, mostly inadvertently it may, but sometimes deliberately, because they don't really know what they're doing. Inadvertently, it can be just by having a seance in your house, say, for example. So you shine for them. They can see that you're interested, and they will latch onto that. And this is what brings them through to our side. The fact that you are entering their realm of domain just by thinking about it. That is why I sometimes get a little bit edgy about talking about them, because they know you're talking about them. The thing is that your soul or your shadow would instantly recognize when they're there. I used to do ghost hunting, ghost busting and stuff like that, but I gave it up as a bad job, because after time it just got boring, because you were only doing the same thing time after time. And really it's boring. It was okay, you could turn up with flight cases full of fancy equipment and all the rest of it, and it looked great. You could come out with thousands of dollars worth of stuff, and that was great. But at the end of the day, you didn't really know what you were doing, but it looked good, and the clients were always pleased, because you were giving them something they could remember. The ghost hunting thing, I did attract a few, and I brought them home with me, and I had to get rid of them. And in one instance, I had a bit of a job getting it out of the house, but I got it out of the house. I don't know where it went, but it certainly didn't stay here. In fact, I was told by psychics that visited my house that psychically it was the cleanest house I'd ever been in. Well, so it should, because it was getting spring cleaned on a regular basis, and it was getting the things out. Basically, our shadow, our soul, if it knows one of these things is near, that is why when you went into a haunted house, sometimes you would get the feeling that something wasn't quite right. There was something wrong with the house, and you'd feel chilling, you'd feel cold. And that is a reaction of your soul or shadow sensing another of these things out there that was not perhaps best inclined towards you. And this was it warning. It was saying, look, be careful, don't get too close, or get out of here, basically, and leave this sort of thing alone. That's just one way of looking at it. But what these things are trying to do is set up a method by which they can stay in our side permanently. Anything that dies is no good to them, and it's only on a temporary basis that they can inhabit us, and they can stay here. But what they're looking for is somewhere they can do this on a permanent basis. And currently, what they're trying to do is through artificial intelligence, by creating an artificial brain, if you like, or an artificial entity that they can actually inhabit, and they can live here more or less at will, because it doesn't matter to them what form it takes, as long as they can latch onto it. In fact, back in the 1980s, there was a Reverend Jim Peasborough. I do always remember reading this because it stuck in my mind, because in some ways it was quite funny, because this Reverend Peasborough, he came to the conclusion that any computer built after 1985 could act as a host for a spirit, if you like, because they had a rudimentary brain and had a rudimentary memory. And he was getting called to his parishioners' houses, and their computers were getting infected because the people were going on to porn sites. They were doing all sorts of stuff that was not in character for them. And the Reverend Peasborough eventually had to, if you like, exercise the computers. And he would go, he would go into the computer, and whatever was in it would recognize him, and they would recognize what he was trying to do, and they'd cuss him out and all the rest of it. But eventually, it just all sort of faded out. But that's an example of what he thought these things were capable of doing. But nowadays, the computers that are getting built now are way, way beyond anything. Now, this is the stuff we know about, because always remember that the only information we can get easily is the stuff that isn't classified, okay? And that's bad enough. For example, I think the world's fastest computer currently is in Japan, and I think this thing operates on trillions of megaflops per second. This thing is just unbelievably fast, and that's the ones we know about. But the thing is, I mean, it isn't exactly like a thing you can put in your back pocket, or it isn't a thing that you can put in your briefcase and carry away with you. This thing is like in a warehouse. I mean, there's dozens and dozens of these racks all tied up as part of this computer. But that's an example of what there is right now. Plus, the fact is, I've no doubt you'll have heard of DARPA in the USA, which is the Defense Advanced Research. And DARPA is currently using artificial intelligence to build hunter-killer robots. They've been told, watch what you're doing, because if these things get out of control and they're as good as you are trying to make them, there's not a thing you can do about it. Because if these things decide they don't want us around no more, they can take us out, and there's not a damn thing we can do about it unless there's some external way of switching them off. Again, this shows you how you can go off subject with this just a little bit, but nevertheless, it's all connected. But really, there's no other way of talking to them, describing them other than they or them, because we don't know what they look like. We have no idea what they look like. We don't even know what they are. Because the reason we don't know what they look like is they can take on any shape, any form, they could look like anything. Anything that makes us comfortable. They're accepted into society at any level and in any era. They will adopt whatever shape or form they think is necessary, which is why we just haven't a clue what they look like. Eventually, once they've got us to a stage where we can develop a system that they can inhabit and permanently live here, they'll kill us off. I'm pretty sure that they will try to. As far as it goes, they want to live permanently in the physical world, and the only way they can do this is through artificial intelligence that they can inhabit, and that means that we become redundant then. That's what they are. They come from the void, they're coming here, they're wearing us as shells until we die out, until it dies off, then they go and get another one, and this is the way it goes through. The spirit that's in us, it just acts as a seeker. It just finds, and the spirit or the soul or the shadow, that's what learns. It learns, and when it does go back to the other side, and they eventually do at some point, they spread this information out. It's a bit like the Akashic records. It's a bit like a universal intelligence that is built up on their side, but we can access it too, and we can access it and transform. We can access it through using hallucinogens. And point of fact, there's an argument that stargates exist in each and every one of us. Each one has their own stargate, and it's up in here, it's up in our heads, and we can access the stargate by using hallucinogens or various meditative techniques, stuff like that. But we can actually access the stargate, but that again is another story. The gods and men part, the lies, the deceptions of gods and men. The deception comes from that they're liars, and they've been fooling us, and we've been accepting them as gods, and we've just been taken as gospel what they've been telling us without any argument. We haven't applied any filters to it. We've just let it wash over us and accepted these things have our best interests in mind, and they do not.
To make your case, you use a hypothesis based on insight gleaned from ancient manuscripts and teachings that our ancestors left behind. Could you tell me something about those ancient manuscripts and teachings, such as what countries, cultures, or religions they came from and what's contained in them?
Judaism, Christianity, Islam, mainly. You could also say the non-secular manuscripts left behind by Aristotle, Plato, the thinkers, the philosophers. It also manifests in them if you know what you're looking for. To be perfectly honest with you, I mean, I'm not going to say stuff that isn't so, that Barry looked after that side of it. He dug into that side of it and just fed me the information out, and I just worked with it and incorporated a lot of it into the text of the book. So Barry, it's just a pity the guy's not here, but he came over from Ireland. He's given a big presentation tomorrow to somebody else, so he's in transit somewhere between Ireland and England right now. But yeah, he'd have been the best guy to answer that. But all I can say is that it's come from belief systems. I say Judaism, Christianity, Islam, all all of that, plus the more secular stuff from Rome and from the Greeks and all the rest of it. Their myths and legends. In fact, all their myths and legends are based on them. It's their interpretation of them. It's a difficult concept to get your, well, maybe you can get it straight away and that's good, but it's a difficult concept to get your head around because these things have become absolutely intrinsic to our belief systems. They're part and parcel of it, mainly because they created it for our benefit and ultimately, but always for their benefit. The ultimate benefactors of all this was them, and that's why we are still here, because they have allowed us to be here. The wars, the famines, the pestilence, all this is all they're doing. They were at the back of all of it. In fact, what's going on, guarantee you now in Eastern Europe, that's them. They're at the back of all this. You can guarantee it for their own reasons, and it's up to us to plumb what those reasons actually are. But I don't know. Maybe they're trying to organise a cull of humanity. I don't know. I haven't a clue. But that you can guarantee they're at the back of this.
Your book, Brian, as you mentioned, shines a spotlight on the beings that slip through the veil from their world to ours, and they wear an array of disguises whose only purpose is to distract us and conceal their true identity. Do you think it's possible that these multi-dimensional entities are, in fact, the demons and devils of legend?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That was how we interpreted them, because that's what they wanted to show us. As far as we're concerned, the human genome, our DNA, only 4% of our DNA, and that's the entire human genome. The other 96%, our scientists look at this and they scratch their heads and they go, junk DNA. We don't know what it's for. And they don't know what it's for. Now, for all we know, that could be for some purpose divined by them that will come out at some point in the future. Because this is why I think it's, I mean, I'd heard the term junk DNA. I've known it for a long time, shall we say. The scientists decided that this is the way it was because it made them feel comfortable, and everybody went, that's what it is, just junk DNA. It ain't junk DNA. It's for a purpose that we hasn't been revealed to as yet. I'll guarantee it, they have a purpose for it.
The deceptions of gods and men challenges the way we perceive fraudulent messages as it reveals the connections between such diverse subjects as ufology, cryptozoology, and the occult. What is that connection?
I sometimes do a presentation to conferences which is called Truth, Lies, and Ufology, because you tend to find that ufology especially is a subject that has been used by the intelligence agencies entirely for their own benefit, as a screen for black projects and all sorts of stuff. Usually when I give this presentation, I have to start off by saying, look, I'm really on your side, guys, and whatever I'm going to say up here, don't throw things at me, please, because you ain't going to like it very much, but what I'm saying is true. And if you want to go to the books, the records, you can check this out for yourselves, because the black projects that have been done, especially in aircraft, especially like in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, this was always masked behind UFOs. Oh, it's a UFO. So people would just stop looking. It ain't our stuff, it's UFOs. That's okay. And this was one of the reasons why I think Project Paperclip worked so well, because a lot of the stuff that was handed over by people like Philip Corso, of all people, because he was involved in all this sort of stuff, he actually allocated a lot of the scientists that came to this country. He allocated a lot of these people on the basis of what they did, and they're only about, lasers came from back engineered from the Roswell crash, or microchips, that was all back engineered from the Roswell crash. No, it wasn't. That came from Nazi Germany, all of it, because they were working on this stuff. But now you couldn't have, shall we say, Bell Labs or whoever saying, "Oh, we've invented this and it came from Nazi technology." They couldn't dare say that. So it came from UFOs, and that became anodyne. Oh yeah, that's where it came from. So that was okay. That was how a lot of the stuff was masked by pretending that it came from UFOs and not captured Nazi technology. Because a lot of the people during Project Paperclip, and you're bound to know this yourself, that came into the USA, they were Nazis, they were murderers, they authorized the deaths of hundreds of people just by signing bits of paper to wish them dead and get them out of the road. So these were people that were given, their slate was wiped clean, and they were let into the USA in exchange for their technology. And it's as simple as that. It was pragmatism as far as the USA was concerned. And I know why they did it, and fair enough, but just don't kid ourselves that they did it for the good of the nation. They did it because they wanted the technology before the Russians got it. But anyway, we're starting to go off subject. So what were we actually talking about there? Sorry.
Fascinating. No, I'm not going to interrupt you at all. Some of the earliest legends suggest a polarized world, good versus evil, yin and yang, black and white. But you and Barry burrow beneath this narrative to reveal the path of the puppet masters, whose promises of power and wealth conceal the bones of the innocent. What is this path of the puppet masters?
I suppose, arguably, if you step it back and step it back and step it back, the puppet masters are them. They are the puppet masters. But they've got to use human beings as the drivers, as the vehicles for their will. As I said, we have no idea what they are. We just don't know. All we see is the end result, not the driver, not the driver. All we see is the end result of it. So the puppet masters are them, and their agenda is ultimately to establish a system here on the planet Earth, whereby they have permanent residence on the surface of this planet. And if they can't do it using human beings, they'll do it using machines. And the machines, as I say, we believe, involve artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, to be truly intelligent, has to be self-aware. And until you get something that is self-aware, it's not intelligent. It just does what it's doing. It obeys its algorithms, it obeys its programs and all the rest of it. But until you get something that is truly, genuinely intelligent, it has to be self-aware. And once it becomes self-aware, then watch it. Because it's all very well saying that artificial intelligence is fine. In fact, they've got a type of as well. They tied artificial intelligence onto, I think, what was it, a fission reactor? Something of the kind. It's a method of it generating power without using atomic energy. They tied some form of AI into solving this, and I believe it actually solved it. And it solved the problem. It's to do with magnetic fields that actually suspend the incredible heat of this. It's hotter than a sun, this thing, once it starts up. And I think they used AI to solve that. But that was in a very, very tight, controlled setting where it couldn't get out. It was used for a purpose, and it was pointed at it, and it was told solve it, and it did. I think that if our concept of artificial intelligence has to be something that can be controlled, and ultimately, and if we can't control it, we've got to be able to pull the plug in it. You literally unplug it. I think if artificial intelligence or anything with using artificial intelligence is so smart, it'll set itself up in a situation where it can't be unplugged. It'll just carry on. In a way, it's a bit like the concept that science fiction writers, they actually create the future for us, because if they can think it, it can probably be done. You could probably make it eventually. So I think, in fact, if I remember rightly, it was one of the US presidents around Reagan's time. It was the Star Wars. It was the Star Wars defense shield that was supposed to be getting built and never actually was. Yeah, as far as I remember, they got a half a dozen of the current science fiction authors in, and they had a brainstorming session to see what they could come up with. And they came up with this system, this Star Wars, or this missile defense thing. And I think that I can't remember which president it was, but it was around Reagan's time. He said he told the scientists, go build it. They've come up with it, go build it, and we'll finance it. But whatever happened, I'm not entirely sure. But I don't think it ever worked. I don't think they ever got it to work properly, if they did got it to work at all. Certainly, it's been attempted, but this again might have been an offshoot of them looking to do something else. And I'm copping out here, actually saying of explaining it to you. I can't explain it to you because we don't know what they are, and we don't really know what they want. All Barry and I could do with this book was extrapolate on what we found out and try and drive it to some sort of outcome. And the outcome that we came to was that they want a form of AI to allow them to exist in our reality permanently, and they don't need us after that.
In your book, you show that the beings in the shadows may not even be as alien as they first seem, and the long path to discovery concludes with some unsettling revelations, confirming that there's a need for cool heads in a world which seems to have been set on a path of destruction. Could you elaborate on that?
If I had a crystal ball, I probably could, but I don't have a crystal ball because we don't really know what they want. Barry and I could only extrapolate on the information that we had. We're going into it in quite a lot of detail. If you've read the book, you'll know that we're going to in a lot of detail. You'll know that we're going to this in a lot of detail. All we do know is that they want something, and they want us to do it because we are the only ones that can do it. They can't do it. They need us to do it. Once they don't need us, we're gone. They would get rid of us in the snap, bang, gone. We're out of there because they don't need us. All they need is an anchor, is a vessel that they can permanently occupy that will do their bidding. And that's, I'm sorry, Stan, that's the closest I can come to it because there is no real answer to this.
You're giving people a lot of food for thought, that's for sure. Should viewers of Paranormal Yacker want to order The Deceptions of God and Men or any of the other books you've written and learn about your international online publication, Phenomena Magazine, how can they do that?
If they want to go on my website, you'll see all the books on there. Amazon has got most of them. The magazine itself is phenomenamagazine.co.uk. That'll take them to the website. Now, the magazine's been running, I guess, for 8, 9, 10, getting on for about 10 years now, 9 years. I've been editing them. I had been editing a newsstand magazine called Paranormal. But when the recession hit about 7 or 8 years ago, it just went down the tubes. The guy that owned it wasn't selling enough copies. It was actually costing him every time he put an edition out. It was costing him a lot of money. So it just folded. Steve got to hear about it, and I knew Steve anyway. Steve Mira, the guy that actually started Phenomena magazine. And Steve asked me if I'd like to come on as his co-editor. I said, yeah, sure, because it gave me something to do. So I came on board with him, and eventually Steve was happy about the way I was editing the magazine. So he stepped back and just gave me. Then he said, right, okay, you're the editor. Go for it. Just go on with it, which is what I did. And it seems to have been going from strength to strength every year. I think currently, as far as downloads go, we're getting about 1.8 million and 2 million downloads a month. It satisfies us, and the people that download it seem to like it. So what else can you say?
Brian Allen, I thank you for being my guest on Paranormal Yacker. I wish you success with the Deceptions of Gods and Men, as well as the other books you've written in your online publication, Phenomena Magazine.
Thank you very much, Stan. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Totally mutual. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Stan Mallow, the Paranormal Yacker. I hope you enjoyed the interview you just watched. To be sure you don't miss any interviews on my free YouTube channel, all you have to do is press the subscribe button on your screen.